So let's talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance. Is it worth playing in 2024, particularly with a sequel coming out? Yes, it's absolutely worth playing, regardless of the sequel. Although I will answer the question on if you should play this before the sequel, I'll answer that later in the video. But regardless, this is absolutely worth playing. Kingdom Come Deliverance is the most immersive game I have ever played, full stop. I can't think of any other game that has felt this real and this grounded. The world is expertly handcrafted, and it feels lived in a way that most games can only dream of achieving. You will establish reputations with towns and the people that live in those towns, which affect how those people interact with you and the prices you pay for items. Combat is extremely grounded, and while there are issues, it feels very real, particularly during moments when a wounded enemy will eventually fall over from blood loss, or an enemy may panic and try to run away, and then you can decide whether you stab them in the back or let them run away. Or maybe that enemy surrenders, and again, you can choose whether you let them go or you stab them. There's a theme here, but anyway, the point is, you can let people run away or stab them. Actually, no. The point is that it's very real world, and it feels very genuine. It's also more dangerous to travel at night than it is during the day. You're more likely to get ambushed, and actually, it's extremely difficult to deal with those ambushes because you're trying to do everything by torchlight. And this is a game when it's dark, it is dark. Without a torch, you have no idea what's going on. So anyway, all of this is to say, it's a very real, very grounded world in every aspect. Yet this is also a very cinematic game, particularly during the opening hours. There were moments in the intro between music, cinematography, setting, and just the feel that reminded me of the movie First Night, for anyone old enough to remember that movie. Not that that movie is a testament to being immersive or grounded, but it's a movie I remember fondly from my youth because it really helped cement my love for medieval fantasy stories. And that's a very cinematic movie. It's a movie that feels very epic. And the opening here, for whatever reason, tugged at that nostalgia and evoked this feeling that a grand adventure is about to take place. And I absolutely loved that. The opening, before the title screen is even displayed, is a shocking 3 to 4 hours, which is also about how long it takes for the game to open up and you to actually get access to the open world. Normally, this is something that would bother me. But in this case, those 3 to 4 hours are honestly some of the best moments in the game. While the plot is somewhat predictable, given that you start out as an unlikely hero in a small town, the way the intro plays out still evokes a certain amount of shock when the inevitable happens. It still makes you feel the loss of the characters that you were introduced to, and it really makes you feel your place in this story. After the opening, the world will open up, although it doesn't really open up until you get a little further in the campaign and you get access to your horse. Once it has opened up, you can explore, but honestly, this isn't a game that's focused on exploration. It's really a game that's about following the campaign, the side quests, and just existing in this world. As far as the campaign, it's pretty great overall. There were definitely portions where it gets a little slow and tedious, but for the most part, the campaign is really well done. It tells an interesting story with some somewhat unexpected turns, and while I did find some of the big story beats to be somewhat predictable, how we got there was, most of the time, entirely unexpected. The campaign also contains a few impressive large-scale battles that were very exciting, but they were a little easy when you realize that the solution is just to run around flanking every enemy and hacking their back to bits. Since we were talking about the combat, I want to dig in kind of deep here. Combat is not a big part of this game. It's here, and you definitely engage in combat fairly often, but of my playtime, I would say maybe 15 to 20% was engaged in combat. That's probably even a little high. Most of this game is about interacting with the world in other ways. Talking to characters, investigating crimes, committing crimes, running errands, and so on. So I would not go into this game expecting a combat-focused game. Additionally, combat, as mentioned, is very grounded. Your strikes are frequently blocked, encounters with single enemies can last a while. This is particularly true early in the game, before you learn master strikes, which allow you to riposte an enemy with a well-timed block. Additionally, encounters with more than one enemy can be absolutely brutal. 2 can be manageable, but 3 or more early game, and honestly even later in the game, is kind of a death sentence. At one point, around a third of the way through the game, there was a camp of 2 enemies that I needed to talk to, and then eventually, the way it all worked out, I needed to kill them. This was before I had learned Master Strikes, and before I had the ability to riposte an enemy. I tried this encounter for over an hour, traveling to the camp, getting murdered in the 2-on-1, then having to do the run back to the camp, getting murdered again, so on and so forth. Eventually, I did find the solution. The issue really was that one of them was fairly well geared, the other one was not, but with 2 of them, there was just no good way to not get surrounded and not get hacked in the back, and eventually you lose all your stamina and they murder you pretty easily. Eventually I found a solution. Instead of going to the camp during the day, I visited the camp at night, and they were sleeping, unarmed, and unarmored. Alternatively, I could have also come by, poisoned their food pot, and then come back later in the day to finish them off. I opted for murdering them naked in their sleep, but you do you. Later in the game, you do get stronger, but groups are still usually a death sentence solo. The enemy can get around you, the strikes coming from multiple sides will easily drain your stamina, leaving you vulnerable to attacks. What I really want to stress here is at no point does this become a power fantasy. At no point are you suddenly a killing machine. And while I absolutely love that here, I also do enjoy games like The Witcher, or even the more extreme Diablo, where I eventually become an unkillable god, laying waste to all that oppose me. This is absolutely the other end of the spectrum. You're Henry, a young blacksmith apprentice who at the start can barely wield a sword, and while I think it really works well here, this could be a turnoff for some. So, that's combat. What else is there to do? A lot, actually. And I will be honest, I think I only scratched the surface of what the game has to offer. You can do herbalism, alchemy, you can repair your gear, hunting, and much more. Those were just the 4 or so that I engaged with myself. As with combat skills, you gain levels and unlock perks and abilities the more you use those skills. For combat, if you use a sword or get hit a lot, your sword or defense skills go up. If you pick herbs, your herbalism goes up. If you craft potions, your alchemy goes up. If you pick locks, your lockpicking skill increases. If you go drinking, your drinking and alcohol skill goes up. Yep, you get better at handling of your alcohol. Additionally, you can romance a few characters, and there are a few other encounters that, you can just discover those for yourself. However, most of the game is going to be about talking to people and completing tasks. There are speech checks in the game that give you the opportunity to convince a character to tell you something or do something for you. These aren't just simple speech checks, they're based on charisma, speech skills, intimidation, and then your reputation. Early game, these can actually be a challenge, but by late game, these actually can be fairly easy. Either way though, they are interesting enough. From a visual standpoint, it really is the visual design that stands out here, as opposed to the actual graphical fidelity. The amount of life that the artists and designers were able to breathe into this world is really impressive. The streets look like they were made by 1,000 feet, hooves, and carts. The clutter outside of homes and near shops feels realistic. The forests feel like more than a bunch of trees clustered on a map. They're spaced out appropriately. Some near towns are actually torn down. A few others have been clearly downed by wind and storms. No, I don't have a tree fetish. I'm just stressing that even trees, something that just about every other game doesn't really do much with, is really placed in such a way to add to the immersion. And the point is really that everything in this game is like that. Everything is done to add immersion. Additionally, the thunderstorms in this game, particularly the one that I believe is scripted at the beginning, these are likely the most real-feeling thunderstorms I have ever experienced in a game. They are absolutely amazing. And if I got good footage, you're probably seeing that thunderstorm right now. I'll give you a few seconds to enjoy it. The thunderstorm also brings me to the audio, which is extremely well done for the most part. The thunderstorm in question sounds like a real thunderstorm in a rural area. The thunder is rolling over the hills and seemingly just surrounds you. The sounds of weapon, armor, horses, all well done. The voice acting is also well done for the most part, although there are a couple that miss the mark a bit. But for the most part, the audio is really well done. I always look at how long to beat before I start a game, particularly any game that I'm going to do a video on. This estimated 40 hours for the main story, 80 hours for main story plus sides, and then 129 as completionist. I mostly focused on the main story and did maybe a third of the side quests, and I put in an easy 60 hours. I'm calling it out both because for those trying to time box, you shouldn't underestimate the amount of hours you're going to put into this game, and for those looking for length and value, you can easily get it here. In my 60 hours, I felt like I was only scratching the surface of several systems, and as I said, I didn't do a lot of the side quests, so there is a lot here. You could easily dump 100 to 120 hours into this game without really trying to stretch it all. So let's talk about my only complaint. The ending. The ending is, well, it's not an ending at all. Trying to talk around spoilers here a bit, but basically one of the main things you're trying to do is left completely unresolved. Possibly more so than any other game I can remember. Now, from the reading I did, it does sound like that's because this game truly wasn't finished. But at the same time, come on people, you can't ship a game like this. Luckily, for whatever reason, by the time I decided to play the game, the sequel was announced the same week. And that sequel is something I want to talk about. Generally, if you ask the question, should I play the first game before the sequel, usually the answer would be something like, it will help give context, but no, you don't need to have played the first game, or the first few games. And I guarantee some people will say the same thing about Kingdom Come Deliverance. And, in my opinion, they are completely wrong. If you have any interest in the sequel, do yourself a favor and please, please, please play this first one. Not just because it's a great game, not just because it's a far cheaper way to see what you're getting into, but honestly, if you don't play the first one, you are going to miss out on the origin of this character and what makes Henry Henry. You aren't going to understand the mission he's on, you aren't going to understand the relationships with the other characters. I strongly recommend you play the first game. Even if you focus on the main story and that's it, that's fine, but play the first game. If you've never played Kingdom Come Deliverance, and an RPG focused on immersion in a grounded medieval setting interests you, you really should carve out the time to play this game. It is truly something special, and it's what makes the AA game market so special. AAA game development would never give you a game like this, and small indies don't have the resources. Games like these are something special that will stay with you for a long time, and I can't recommend this game enough. If you liked the video, maybe subscribe or hit the like button. Apologies for the delays between videos. I became a father at the end of April, and it took a major hit to my free time. The last couple weeks, though, I've been starting to figure things out, starting to get some time back, so hopefully I can start putting together some videos again. Not going to say just yet what the next video is, as it could be one of a few things. I have a few things recorded, and I'm working on a couple other things. Currently looking at Steam Next Fest and debating a video on the recent video showcases. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.